Welcome. Tziporah here from supportintimacy.com. And today we are going to talk about the actions that might potentially be sabotaging your sex life, as well as add a little sprinkle in of some perimenopause and our sexual choices. Yeah, so for those of you who are new to Intimacy Hub or new to me, again, my name is Tziporah Kingsbury. I am the founder and the creator of supportintimacy.com, as well as redefining-intimacy.com. And I work with high achieving professionals who, they got it going on in their business world, but personally, they find struggle in asking for what they vulnerably need and for accessing more emotional intimacy in the world. So I help them create greater confidence, inner peace, and self-esteem to amplify and create some fulfilling relationships, both personally and professionally. So I want to dive in that today's topic was inspired by an interview that I was in yesterday. And the wonderful Laura, the wonderful woman who interviewed me, brought up a potent topic, and it started with perimenopause and what do you do if your male partner wakes up with an erection and you're just, your sexual style is like you do not feel turned on in the morning. You might feel tired, you might feel dirty, like you got to brush your teeth and you want to have fresh breath and you want to be showered and fresh. And originally the conversation went into as a woman male gender conversation. And then, I just brought into the topic that I find it's more individual based, not necessarily gender based. But how often have you had sex out of obligation? Yeah. Have you felt that in your world? And have you even been aware when you're having sex out of obligation? And we'll get back to the perimenopause piece, but sex out of obligation happens in many ways, right? Right. It could be our partner wakes up with an erection in the morning, or just our partner wakes up in the morning and wants to get it on with us. And you might do it anyway out of, well, I love my partner and I find after a while I get turned on and I'm into it, or I want to make my partner happy. And or in moments when you're just not feeling like having sex and you say yes anyway. And so that's what we're going to dive into a little bit here. And my invitation today is the encouragement is to expand our view of what sex even is and what an evolved idea of sex might look like. And so sex out of obligation, we go into it to make someone else happy. Often your body might feel constricted, contracted. You might have other emotional needs, or it just might not be your thing in the moment. So what could you do to create connection that might not include sexual penetration? That's the big question I want to extend to you today. Because imagine if it's the morning, we'll stay with that story. If it's that morning situation and rather than talking about it, you either do it, you have sex, not wanting to, or you become silence and just go into argument or just silence and walk away and ignore the whole topic altogether. And if you've chosen one of those three outlets, what most likely has happened in your relationship where you've experienced this is over time resentment, frustration, a lack of emotional intimacy that you're really desiring, and just a lack of overall connection. Yet getting to the point of not understanding why that happened, because this domino effect took place in your original choice of either having sex and not wanting to, silencing yourself and not saying anything and walking away and ignoring the subject altogether. And so you're in bed in the morning, your partner wants to have sex, and your partner is like a feely, touchy sort of person in the morning, and you're recognizing you're not, if it's perimenopause, you've just had night sweats all night. Your sex drive is low in the morning and you have a preference of being refreshed. And so, what could you do? Well, have a conversation. You know me, if you've been listening to my videos, I am big on clear communication. So, talk about what you feel in the morning. Acknowledge your partner for, wow, I acknowledge your huge epic sex drive that you wake up with. I acknowledge your desire to penetrate me and to feel connected and to feel pleasure first thing in the morning. And I notice I actually feel really tired when I wake up because I don't sleep well. I notice that I feel more aroused and excited after I've taken a shower, after I brush my teeth, when I feel refreshed in the morning, maybe after a few hours have gone by. And so I really would love to see you get your needs met. And I'm unable to fulfill and be a part of those needs first thing in the morning. So that's one conversation. It's okay. So how can you open up the conversation to getting closer? Because what you just did there is, rather than sabotaging your sex life by saying yes where you were no and creating these trauma loops in your nervous system and the resentment in the relationship, is you just opened up to this vulnerable conversation. And you know what that gets you? That vulnerable conversation for you was a way to access deeper emotional intimacy. And it might feel awkward at first. There might be feelings that come up of feeling disappointed. Your partner might feel disappointed. Your partner might feel agitated. However, when we talk about having such conversations, my intention is not to say deny those frustrated feelings that come up, because talking about them is also what could bring us closer, because there's a difference between talking about the anger, the frustration, or the agitation versus projecting those feelings and vomiting those feelings onto another in violence. They're two different things. So the first one is a very vulnerable lean into more emotional intimacy. So once you've done like, what could you do now? You opened up the conversation. You can start to listen to each other's frustration around your sexual needs and desires. And only when you understand and have compassion for those sexual needs and desires can you create something different. Can you even start to, I'll say strategize, but you can actually start to strategize into what might be possible. Like, where might you meet halfway? What could work for each of you? And the fun part along the way, for me at least, the fun part that I want to offer you is being in the journey. Like, even the goal isn't the goal. Like, the end result to have sex isn't the goal here. It's, what can you take out of the journey? And so in this conversation, the more you unpack the needs, the feelings, the desires, you're already opening up to intimacy. And potentially you're already starting to trigger an arousal state in your system, a pleasurable arousal state. Because I don't know about you, but for me, hearing someone talk to me about their sexual desires, even if they're not my sexual desires, it actually brings me pleasure. I feel pleasure in witnessing them talk about their pleasure. And so think about that for a minute. In order to clear the pathway to get to such a conversation, there has to be radical honesty and compassion about those needs and those feelings, 100% across the board. Because then you're able to be more in a compassionate place and have more availability to listen to what their desires are. And in that place, like, if I'm listening, I'm more wide open. And now I have less of my agenda on the conversation. And now, because my I'll call it my own pleasure agenda, because that is one of the ways that we sabotage our sex life, by having our own pleasure agenda and putting our pleasure agenda on someone else. But when I'm going to feel heard, when you start to feel heard and seen and understood, and you give voice to what you're feeling, now the idea is you have less charge. There's less charge, there's less agenda. And now there's more availability to, I'm going to sit back and I want you to tell me more about your desires. Tell me more about your sexual desires. Tell me more about what turned you on about having sex in the morning. I want to know all of it. And so the fun part of this dialogue is, without an agenda, without even knowing you're actually doing it, sometimes what starts to happen is you're creating a space for foreplay, connection through the conversation. And so where the sex drive might have not have been present, like the desire to engage sexually in penetrative sex, I'm going to call it penetrative sex today, to serve our topic. And before you know it, because the stress, the agenda was taken away, now it's created space in your nervous system through this conversation of closeness to inspire a felt sense of arousal in your body. So just be with that for a moment, because as I continue to talk about arousal, I'm not only talking about penetrative sex, because penetrative sex was an agenda. And agendas lead to stress and agitation, especially if you each have different needs. And so 2 ways we've addressed right now that that you might sabotage your sex life is, one is having sex out of obligation, where you feel stressed, where you feel agitated, where you feel disconnected, and you don't even feel aroused in your body, right? Which leads to resentment, which leads to disconnect. And then we've talked about the second piece that could lead to sabotaging your sex life is having a pleasure agenda. And that means either making someone else responsible for feeling pleasure when I do, or having an agenda that someone else feels pleasure the same way in the same time that I feel pleasure, right? Stress, and any stress, that arousal state for sex is going to be lower. And so I want to talk about now and jump to expanding your view on what sex even is. So in this dialogue about sabotaging your sex life, what if the idea that sex means I have to be penetrated was sabotaging your sex life? Because today I'm here to toss out the idea that, oh my God, sex is so much more than penetration. And you might already be there. You might already have that in your life. However, there's many people, I know the people I'm working with on a daily basis, don't necessarily experience that yet in their life. And so imagine that you weren't feeling aroused. You start to have this conversation. You start to feel aroused in your body. And ask yourself, what brings you pleasure? Like, leave penetrated sex out here, like put it out over to the side for a moment, and think about, why do you have penetrated sex? Typically, it's for connection. It's to feel pleasure. It's to have intimacy at times with a partner. And so could you not reach pleasure, intimacy, and connection with your partner, your lover, without even penetration? Yes, right? The answer is yes. What if you created a strategy where, wow, I would love to be spooned by you and to sync up our breath together and to just focus on the breath and the body's touching without an agenda. So going into these processes without an agenda of having sex. And that way the guard is down. It's like, nothing's going to penetrate me right now, because that's our agreement. What if you just naturally went into a conversation that you set a time and a date that let's talk about where we find pleasure, sexual pleasure, what arouses us, and allowing that conversation to be a tool to enhance a felt sense of pleasure in your body? What if you explored sensual touch with breath, with dialogue, where the rule of the game was there was no penetration? However, again, within those play, we'll call them play date experiences, your body has a chance to allow its arousal to naturally start to build. And so I want to close on, when it comes to sabotaging our sex life, start to only say yes where your whole body is a yes. And start to organize these play dates I'm sharing with you in a way where there's no agenda and the rule of the game is not to penetrate. So your body, your system can start to feel safe, can start to feel calm, can start to access the emotional connection that it's needing potentially to feel sexual arousal again. So my hopes is that you take this away and that this serves you some way in your life right now. And in this moment, I want to share with you the upcoming Redefining Intimacy course, which is starting on January 6th. And I want to invite you into that, because if this sounds interesting to you, if you want to explore the idea of setting clearer and more compassionate boundaries in your world, with your family, with your children, with your partner, if you want to develop more inner peace, a groundedness in your daily life where your nervous system actually feels more regulated, and you're ready to share more of your vulnerable wants and needs in your relationship, I invite you into this course. So this course is a 10-week online program, not recorded. It is a live course. So I get to be with you live, which is very exciting. It is a live course bringing people, amazing humans together from around the world, where we meet once a week for 90 minutes. And then as part of this 10-week course, you also get a bonus session, which is a one-on-one session with me. And so if you're curious to learn more about this course, Early Bird Special is running until the holidays through next week. I'd love to offer and extend a complimentary discovery call to you where I get to learn more about you. I'd love to share more about this course and see if it's a fit for you right now in your life. And I know in our last Redefining Intimacy course that happened this summer, there are people from Austria, from England, from Canada, as well from the US. And so my wish is to serve you in the highest of ways, and let me know if you are interested. And so I will be sending you a direct message with specific questions if you are interested. So I invite you to comment below, yes, please, meaning that I will take that as you want to learn more about this program. And then I will send you specific questions to start our conversation to see if it's a fit for what you need right now. Thank you for joining me today on this week's live training on ways that you might be sabotaging your sex life. And I look forward to being with you again next week. Be well.